Hello, another week, somehow there's more TF2 news. I don't understand how this keeps happening, but on the left here I have the item schema from last time we talked about it, from the Penny Arcade stuff. And on the right is the item schema that they updated and changed on December 3rd. And there's 12 new additions, and they're very strange, and I think it's interesting to talk about it, so let's see what they are. If we collapse lines, we can see this is the only change in the entire schema. And what are we looking at here? There's a new entry for an item 1 and an item 2, and that's all there is. How strange. Since Missmas is probably soon upon us, I do think it does make sense that it's probably some sort of Missmas thing for that, but there is also enough reasonable doubt here that maybe it's for something else, maybe it means something else. And I'm going to present the facts to you, and you can decide however way you lean towards. And you can decide for yourself, but it's interesting. Okay, so first off, let's look at the information that we do have. So obviously the names don't really matter. It's just item 1, item 2. They are extremely clearly just like placeholder stuff. The first part where it gets interesting is that it is a no entity item class. So what is an item class? Well, basically it kind of just describes to the game what kind of object this is. So you have stuff like the Saxon Hill Jungle Inferno hat, the hat you get from the contract reward, and it's like it's a TF wearable, so it's a hat object. And then you have stuff like the gloves of running urgently. It's a type of, fist weapon, right? The hot hand is defined as a slap weapon. Okay, sure. The gas passer is a jar of gas. The thermal thruster is a rocket pack. So it just defines the class of item it is. Now, what's interesting about our new mystery items is that they use the no entity item class. And if you look at the top right of the screen, wait a second, 2 of 3, and we're seeing 2 of them already? This document has 200,000 lines, so it's only appeared 3 times in this whole document. So what is the other mention of this? Interesting. It's in the taunt section. Now what this is that instead of repeatedly writing the same thing for all similar types of items, Valve in this document can define basically templates that they attach to other objects. So instead of all this generic predefined data that you will want to put on every single taunt item, you can just put them all here and automatically attach them by specifying a template. So in all of the item schema, only taunt uses no entity thing. So what seems to be the most reasonable assumption here is that I guess this is Valve preemptively setting up new taunts for Smithmas, and there's going to be 2 of them. Maybe that's what it means. But I'm not sure how true that is because of where this is defined, the number that's attached to it. There are ID 1199 and 1200. And if we look at the list of ID ranges that are used in this document, you can already see that Valve likes to jump numbers and put things in different places. So I wrote a script to analyze how they like to put their numbers up. And here are basically all of the major ranges. You can see that even within their major ranges, there are some number skips and such. This first range vaguely goes from 0 to about 2600. And then it skips to 5k, and then I've labeled it as it seems to be mostly strange parts, or basically all entirely strange parts, from about 6k, and then they jump to 6.5k for I think what seems to be basically all community strange filters. It goes from 8k to about 1800k, and then 20k, 30k, and that's about where it ends. But this last one is important because 30k is basically where all of the community stuff goes into. So here's the 30,000 item range. You can see how it skips from 18k down to like 30k. This isn't quite exactly the first community-made item in TF2, but you can see how this is where they've kind of started to create this pattern and this standard of way of doing things. Now, if we search for the box trot, this is the Spy's box trot. It is the first community-created taunt, and it was released with the Gunmetal update. So if we go and do a search for the box trot, the first community-made taunt, and it starts at the 30k range. And if we go look at the newest taunt that was added, in the most recent update, the Rain King, If we go into our item schema and we search for it, it is 31,547. So all of the community made taunts are in the 30k range, and our new mystery item isn't. So it's not in the ID section of where community made items are put. But on top of that, if we look at the item ranges, it seems to imply that it is also specifically something Valve has some involvement in. Now, obviously, the ID could just be temporary. It could be placeholder. Maybe they'll go and update it and change it later as well. So that's always possible. But for now, if we go look at all of the items from 0 to 1,200, they're all kind of Valve related, and I'll show you here. So if we scroll through this, these are all Valve items. And it gets complicated because there are some promo items, and I think there are some early community update items in here as well. So it's not a super definitive rule, but if we look at the very bottom of the list, it's the soundtrack promo package. And you have like the Panzer Pants taunt, which if we check on the wiki, it's not made by a community member, it's made by Valve. So this item range, if I also remind you, they skip down to 5,000 after this general block of stuff. It's pretty clearly reserved for Valve-related-ish kind of things. So make of that what you will. So let's jump over to the last little bit of information we have about these items. First sale date. This is listed for November 27th, but I've saved this for last because it's honestly not too big of a deal. From what I've noticed, first sale date isn't actually literally the first time the public has access to it, and it's kind of vaguely around when Valve has decided to put this item into the item schema. And they decided that, okay, it's time to release this item. So if we go look up the Sticky Bomb Jumper, for example, Valve lists a first sale date of October 11th. If we go check on the Sticky Jumper on the wiki, this came out more than 10 days later on October 27th. If we go look up the Amputator, this lists a date of 2010, December 8th. And when did this actually come out? Came out December 17th, 2010. First sale date, we can't put that much stock into. It's kind of vaguely just, it seems like when Valve has decided, alright, we're done working on this, it is safe, it is ready to go be put into the item schema. That's kind of feels like what it vaguely indicates. Okay, so at this point, the theory that it's a community-made taunt for Smithmas kind of doesn't seem like it makes sense. And I also don't think it's insane to doubt that Valve has randomly decided that they want to go make more taunts and put them into the game. This doesn't seem like it makes any sense either. So what if it's the Halloween cosmetic cases, right? That's not possible. The Halloween case, it's in the 5k range. And if I scroll up, you can see this is where literally all of the cosmetic cases have been defined in. This is last year's Halloween case. And if I keep scrolling up, there's just, you roll back the years and they're all defined all in the same place here. So we're now at Halloween 2022. And we can keep going, and all the cases are here. Winter 2020 cosmetic case. So it's not gonna be the Smithmas 2026 case. That seems pretty assured. Pain Train? The Pain Train's in 154, but I mean, yeah, sure, you can take this to mean that they're adding a new weapon. Yeah, maybe they're adding a placeholder for a new TF2 weapon they're adding with Christmas. But that's up to you to decide how likely you think that is. So the Panic Attack is probably the newest community weapon we have, and it is in the Valve range. So you can, yeah, if you really want to hold on to hope that there's new weapons in the seasonal updates, then sure. Okay, yeah, this would also make sense if they were adding a community Tour of Duty badge. The Tour of Duty badges seem to be in this Valve section as well, so that would make sense. That is possible. They have the Tour of Duty badge defined here. Let's check on the Australians. I don't think they're an actual distinct weapon. I think they just attached them to stock weapons, and it just like changes the appearance of it. Like, not every reskin has like a distinct weapon. A lot of them are generic, like skinned, like special skin copy of a weapon. And then there's like code to dynamically change the skin that it uses. The Jungle Inferno pass, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to assume they're gonna add an entirely new update contract campaign to Smithmas. But even then, the Jungle Inferno contract pass is in the 5,800 range. So they seem to prefer to lump them in with all the other cosmetic stuff, like the cases. But here's what I think is probably the most plausible sounding possible thing that kind of makes sense. The Tour of Duty ticket was put in the Valve range, so it does fit within the parameters of everything we know so far. This feels possible that there's really nothing else that would really make any sense for Valve to be personally adding into the Valve section for, because they're not going to make anything new. They're not going to make a new taunt. Though what is strange is that I think they could have just defined this as what the Tour of Duty ticket is defined as, which is a craft item. I'm not particularly sure why they have to call it a no entity, but maybe if you define it as a craft item, there's a bunch of other information you have to fill out and they were lazy, so that's why. It is also possible that maybe this is related to Poker Night, and maybe they're adding new Poker Night promo items as well, like the Penny Arcade people are adding even more new promo items that we've never seen before, and they're new here. Maybe, but we don't really know, and honestly, all of this information can change as well. They could teleport all of this down to the 30,000 range, and haha, actually it's a bunch of new community taunts. So yeah, we really have no great idea exactly what this is. But with all the information we have so far, assuming Valve didn't feel like wasting their time in the future and they broadly put this about where it should be, new promo items or MVM related stuff does seem to make sense. But yeah, I think that's about everything we can conclude from here. Strange times being a TF2 fan for whatever reason. Maybe we'll have news again somehow next week. It'll be interesting to see actually what happens to these entries after the Smithmas update as well. So I guess at minimum I'll have to see you again, and we'll talk about if anything changed with what's going on here whenever that releases. Okay, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the news update.